On this Thursday night, a deadly anti-Semitic rampage at a synagogue in England on the holiest day of the Jewish year.
A vile individual committed a terrorist attack.
The suspect takedown and the quick actions that saved worshippers. Intercepted, the outrage over Israel stopping this aid flotilla headed to Gaza. Keeping tabs on the world's most secretive country.
There's never been less constraints on North Korea's behavior.
What this Canadian eye in the sky is looking for. Jeff Semple reports from over the East China Sea. Plus, calls to ditch the switch.
For over 117 years, we have simply followed this tradition.
Why this MP says daylight saving time needs to be put to bed forever.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Nitu Garcha.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Britain's Prime Minister is reacting to a deadly assault today, saying Jews were attacked because they were Jews and Britain was attacked because of its values. 2 people were killed and 4 others were seriously injured outside of a synagogue in Manchester. It began when the attacker drove a car into a crowd on the holy day of Yom Kippur.
The driver of the car was seen then to attack people with a knife. He was wearing about his body a vest which had the appearance of an explosive device.
Congregants and synagogue security prevented the attacker from getting inside, and police arrived and shot him within minutes. They say he's a 35-year-old British citizen of Syrian descent. At least 2 other suspects have since been arrested. Vincent McAviney has our top story and a warning some of the video may be disturbing.
They've killed him.
The man seen here on the ground has just been shot by British police after trying to force his way into this synagogue.
Get back! If you're not involved, move back!
7 minutes earlier, he crashed a car into a crowd outside and started stabbing people. The attacker seemingly tries to detonate an explosive device strapped to him, forcing the officers to fire once again. Police have praised the bravery of security staff and worshippers who managed to lock the doors, preventing the attacker from harming many more inside. A bomb disposal officer used a robot to secure the scene, the attacker's knife visible beside him. Police determined his device was not viable. Counter-terrorism police say they've made other arrests in connection nearby. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer rushed back from a summit in Denmark to chair an emergency cabinet meeting with police and intelligence services. Political and faith leaders across the spectrum have condemned the anti-Semitic attack.
I express my solidarity, but also my sadness that you still have to live with these fears. Nobody should have to do that. And so I promise you that I will do everything in my power to guarantee you the security that you deserve, starting with a more visible police presence protecting your community.
The congregation was celebrating Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, and the attack has shaken this diverse neighbourhood.
I'm Jewish and absolutely terrified for somebody to know today is Yom Kippur. I just feel this has been definitely planned. I don't feel safe.
Everyone's concerned, everybody's worried, everybody's scared, and we shouldn't be scared to feel or believe in what we believe.
Many members of the Jewish community say they've been expecting something like this since the October 7th attacks in Israel in 2023 set off a wave of anti-Semitism. The worshippers themselves carried on their disrupted service in another building after being evacuated, undeterred by the threat. Nitu?
Vincent McAviney. Thanks, Vincent. Prime Minister Mark Carney is calling the Manchester attack an appalling anti-Semitic atrocity. In a statement, he goes on to say Canada will always protect the inalienable rights of Jewish communities to live their lives free from intimidation and threats of violence.
Nothing changed as a result of the Manchester event. We already have increased patrols in these areas.
Police in the York region north of Toronto say they were already on heightened alert because of Yom Kippur and the upcoming October 7th anniversary. In BC, Vancouver police, among others, are also increasing patrols around faith-based locations. As we approach 2 years since the Hamas attacks, tensions over Israel's response are high. An international aid flotilla that attempted to break through Israel's naval blockade to reach Gaza overnight failed. Dozens of boats and hundreds of activists, including Greta Thunberg, were detained. Eric Sorensen has that story.
Anybody inside?
Israeli forces called out, then boarded this flotilla vessel, one of close to 40 boats carrying activists with humanitarian aid who were detained by the Israelis as they approached Gaza. Among the estimated 400 flotilla members was prominent activist Greta Thunberg, who posted this message beforehand.
If you are watching this video, I have been abducted and taken against my will by Israeli forces. Our humanitarian mission was non-violent and abiding by international law.
The flotilla started out in late August, sailing across the Mediterranean. The global Sumud flotilla says most boats were intercepted in international waters 50 or more kilometers from Gaza, then directed to Ashdod, Israel, north of Gaza. As boats arrived at the Israeli naval base, vans were being sent in to collect up the flotilla members.
Free Palestine!
The reaction has been swift. Protesters in many European cities decried Israel's blockade and its military campaign in Gaza. This protester in Paris calls it genocide by the Israeli army. Ireland's Prime Minister supports the flotilla.
It's a humanitarian mission, no threat to anybody other than to highlight and also to bring humanitarian aid into the people of Gaza.
The widespread protests are a sign that Israel is losing support in many parts of the world. In the United States, despite President Trump's backing, Israel's steadfast support from Americans has declined sharply. A New York Times poll 2 years ago showed 47% of American voters sympathized with Israel, compared to 20% with the Palestinians. A new poll shows 34% sympathize with Israel and 35% with the Palestinians, an unprecedented reversal. Israel says its military campaign, which has devastated Gaza, is necessary to root out Hamas, which brutally attacked Israel 2 years ago and still holds Israeli hostages. Late Thursday, Israel's foreign ministry posted pictures of Greta Thunberg, stating that she and her friends are safe and healthy. While in cities like Rome, large crowds took to the streets late into the evening. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
The federal government is rolling out a long-awaited new agency to overhaul how the military buys equipment. Prime Minister Mark Carney says the Defense Investment Agency will build domestic supply chains and manufacturing and help create high-paying jobs. Secretary of State for Defense Procurement Stephen Fuhr will oversee the agency. He says buying Canadian will be a priority.
This agency has authority, resources, and people to get it done, and we're going to move forward at the speed of relevance to make sure that our Canadian Armed Forces get the equipment they need on time.
The government says the new office will be housed within Public Services and Procurement Canada and will help consolidate the procurement process by cutting red tape and removing duplicate approvals. In Ottawa, it was a busy day of discussions for Prime Minister Mark Carney's point man to the United States. Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc spent much of the day talking to MPs and senators who are concerned about tariffs, trade deals, and the current relationship between the two countries. But LeBlanc remains optimistic that deals can and will be done with the Trump administration. David Aiken is keeping track of the discussions. David?
Well, like many Canadians, Neithu, some senators and MPs thought dropping dollar-for-dollar tariffs against the U.S. weakened Canada's negotiating position with the United States. But the Minister for Canada-U.S. Relations insists Canada continues to have leverage with the U.S. because of the harm President Donald Trump's tariffs are doing to his own economy.
We are confident that the domestic pressure from senators, governors, business leaders, union leaders in the United States will also create potentially an opportunity for us to come to an agreement with the American administration.
Dominic LeBlanc said Canada would not do what Japan, the EU, and others have done and settle for an across-the-board tariff from the U.S. in exchange for dropping sectoral tariffs leveled on softwood, steel, and aluminum. And LeBlanc rejected the idea that protecting supply management, that's the system that shields dairy and poultry farmers in Canada from U.S. and foreign competition, that system could derail trade talks in other areas.
No, I don't think it puts in jeopardy. It's a fundamental tenet of of our economic and food security policy.
A self-reliant nation.
The Conservatives sharply criticized the government's strategy, saying the Liberals promised quick action on the U.S. trade dispute during the election.
But Mr. LeBlanc, you're in a really tough spot. I mean, you're negotiating with a country that seems to keep moving the goalposts, and your boss keeps making promises that seems to not be able to deliver upon.
It has been a gigantic bait and switch. We were sold about this brilliant negotiator. Where is it?
And while LeBlanc is confident and optimistic that all this trade turmoil with the U.S. can and will be resolved, he repeated something today that Carney has often talked about, that things will not be like they used to be, that the relationship Canada has with America has forever changed. Neither.
Okay, David Aiken in Ottawa. Thanks, David. Canada's interim parliamentary budget officer says affordability has improved sharply in some of the country's most expensive cities. In an updated housing report, the PBO says the national gap between home prices and what families can afford fell from a peak of 80% in September of 2023 to 34% this August. Lower mortgage rates, higher wages, and cooler prices are helping, with Toronto and Hamilton showing the biggest improvements. But affordability continues to deteriorate in Calgary, Montreal, and Quebec City, while Halifax remains the country's least affordable market. Alberta has recorded its first death from measles since an outbreak began in the spring. The health minister says a child born prematurely died shortly after birth. The mother had contracted measles during pregnancy. In July, the province announced it had the most measles in North America on a per capita basis. Another dangerous run-in on the runway. Coming up, the latest incident of two planes colliding at an airport. Plus, a city in Quebec on edge after a deadly shooting. Police in Quebec are on high alert tonight. They're anticipating possible retaliation for a brazen murder at a busy Montreal area coffee shop yesterday. One man linked to organized crime was killed, and as Mike Armstrong explains, he was well known to police.
The police tape is still up, with forensic teams busy inside. Investigators are documenting every detail of what happened in a crime that's left some locals shaken.
It's pretty scary. It's horrible. I can't believe it in daylight this is happening.
It was an attack as bold as it was violent. At about 10:30 Wednesday morning, the Starbucks was busy. Surveillance video shows more than 20 people inside when two gunmen entered. They walk at first, then move quickly to the back. Several shots are fired. The two men then turn and run out. Now, the person who appears to have been the main target was shot and killed, a man in his 40s known on the streets as Bobby the Greek. Two men with him were injured in the attack. They're believed to have been acting as bodyguards. But the victim was known to police. Criminologist Vincent McAviney.
He was involved in drug distribution. He was involved in extortion. More recently, he was involved in in protection rackets in the suburbs of Montreal.
Now, the crime scene in the Montreal region is changing, Paredes says. The mafia and bikers no longer control things the way they once did, and smaller, younger gangs are emerging. That said, they are being watched by police, and solving this crime, Paredes predicts, might not take long.
We already know who this guy was. We already know who he was connected to. So probably they also know who he was fighting against.
The public nature of a brazen daylight murder that put dozens of people in danger has police and politicians promising pressure on organized crime. Considering the reaction, whoever ordered the hit might find it isn't good for business. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Eye in the sky ahead on board the Canadian mission helping to enforce sanctions against North Korea.
Stay calm, stay seated with your seatbelt securely fastened.
A dangerously close call at New York's LaGuardia Airport last night when two Delta airline passenger jets collided on the tarmac. Officials say a flight arriving from North Carolina was taxiing to its gate when it was clipped by another plane departing for Virginia. A flight attendant suffered minor injuries. No one else was hurt. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board is now investigating. Canada is stepping up its role in one of the world's toughest security missions. Members of the Royal Canadian Air Force and Navy are deployed to Japan as part of Operation Neon, tracking North Korean ships suspected of violating UN sanctions. Our Jeff Semple boarded one of those patrol flights to see the mission up close.
This is Canada's eye in the sky, conducting surveillance and gathering intelligence on the world's most secretive country. This Royal Canadian Air Force crew, based in Japan, is patrolling international waterways leading to North Korea.
The information that we're gathering on a day-to-day basis is super important.
The Canadians are armed not with weapons, but cameras and radar equipment, scanning the seas for ships suspected of secretly transporting oil and other supplies to North Korea in violation of UN sanctions targeting its nuclear weapons program.
We try to find those vessels which are in close proximity and maybe doing ship-to-ship transfers of fuel.
But those ships have plenty of places to hide. The East China Sea and Yellow Sea are vast and home to some of the world's busiest shipping routes.
The density here is quite high, so we only have a couple seconds really to look at each vessel to deem if it's suspicious or not.
That suspicious behavior can include vessels that have turned off their transponders. The Canadians also receive Allied intelligence that lists suspect ships, and when they spot one, they move in.
Well, here we go. The Canadian crew has just spotted a suspicious ship in the East China Sea, so they're now flying low to take a closer look.
Their Aurora aircraft drops to 300 feet to photograph, record, and report the ship's activity.
Once we gather all the information we need, we'll just send it up to our higher-ups.
Their findings used to be sent to a United Nations team of experts, but not anymore.
Geopolitical shifts have worked in North Korea's favor to undermine the sanctions regime.
Kim Jong-un's blossoming relationship with Vladimir Putin has changed the game. North Korea has sent thousands of troops and weapons to support Russia's war machine in Ukraine. In return, Russia is helping North Korea to evade sanctions. Last year, the Kremlin used its UN veto to cancel the sanctions enforcement panel.
I would say there's never been less constraints on North Korea's behavior.
Satellite images show Russia has also provided North Korea with more than 1 million barrels of oil and suspected nuclear weapons technology. And Russia isn't the only country in North Korea's corner.
Well, this Canadian crew have been watching the seas below. They themselves are being watched. Take a look. At several points today, we've been tailed by a Chinese fighter jet.
The jet intercepted us 3 times and followed for more than an hour. Beijing claims to support sanctions on North Korea's nuclear program, but its actions speak louder.
The PLA and Air Force has threatened and behaved in a hostile manner toward those Canadian Air Force pilots. That gives you some indications of China's mentality about this issue, and it's not a promising sign.
That support from China and Russia has empowered North Korea to expand its nuclear weapons program, including developing missile technology capable of reaching the United States. Experts say all of that has made the Canadian mission in this region much more difficult and urgent. Jeff Semple, Global News, Okinawa, Japan.
Is it finally time for a change? Next, why a federal politician says daylight saving time needs to clock out permanently. A wild surprise for shoppers in southern Arizona after a bear strolled through a grocery store. The animal was caught on camera roaming the aisles, even coming close to some customers. No one was hurt, and the bear is said to have left on its own. Well, with the weather cooling and the sun setting sooner, the time to change our clocks is just a month away. The twice-a-year activity has been a constant practice for most of the country for more than 100 years, but the clock may be running out. As Heather Yurex-West explains, federal legislation is looking at making one last permanent time change.
As anyone with a young child will tell you, changing the clocks twice a year is just not fun.
It's really hard. It really shifts the whole dynamic. Everybody is out of
out of sync for a while.
It is a little bit crazy. It's honestly hard enough to get a bedtime routine going.
While much of Canada has been springing forward and falling back an hour year after year, there are plenty of drawbacks to messing with time. From issues of public safety, traffic accidents increase when the times change, to health concerns.
The acute effect is the stroke and heart attack, but the chronic effect of having to change clock twice a year is that we see an increased risk in cancer, obesity, overall cardiovascular disease, and diabetes.
It's why a Liberal MP is saying time's up.
So my private member's bill will seek to ask the federal government to hold a pan-Canadian conference alongside their provincial and territorial counterparts, as well as our Indigenous partners, to formalize an agreement to end this practice and establish one set time in Canada.
There are no biannual clock changes in Yukon or Saskatchewan, but several other provinces have considered ditching the practice too. Voters in Alberta narrowly chose to keep the system in place when the subject was put to referendum in 2021. Legislation has already been passed in Ontario, BC, and Manitoba to move to a consistent year-round time, but only when the same move is made in the United States.
We're from Saskatchewan. We don't have daylight savings time.
And is it wonderful?
It's awesome.
And now a federal push to see Canada follow Saskatchewan's lead and stop the clock change. Heather Yurex, West Global News, Calgary.
So for now, the day to remember is November 2nd. That's when clocks will go back an hour. That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Neetu Garcha. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Sambro, Nova Scotia, Marmora, Ontario, and Salt Spring Island, BC. Keep them coming. Send your pictures of Canadian pride to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks so much for watching. Anne Gaviola will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Have a great night.